Well, hello there. So, criminal negligence. It's a form of homicide. It's also known as involuntary manslaughter. Common examples of these crimes would be things like, texting while driving at high speeds in a residential neighborhood anyway, firing a deadly weapon at a public event, leaving children in a car unattended, especially in hot water, or swiping at someone that's holding a sharp knife. Now, stay tuned because we are going to briefly review two powerful lessons today because lines become too easily blurred sometimes. Number one, there is a judge or a jury for a specific purpose. So only then should that duty take place. And number two, never assume to know, but let a thorough investigation occur before placing blame and or accuse, because more often than not the valid reason one exists even is because facts are found and opinions are quickly squashed. Now, negligent homicide is typically charged as a felony. As a result, it's prison time if convicted. Now, manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide are serious crimes, but manslaughter is considered a more severe offense than criminally negligent homicide. But it is defined as a crime resulting in the killing of another person. It is generally viewed as conduct where a person ignores, a known or obvious risk or disregards the life and safety of others. So, side note that criminal defense attorneys often draw up, several legal strategies to help defendants, challenge negligent homicide charges. Common ones would be things like showing that a defendant either killed someone while acting in self defense, or the victim was killed in an accident, and then there is not sufficient evidence, to support a guilty verdict. So often charges are dropped down, though, too, or found to be, in some cases, as criminally negligent, which is when the person acts either in a reckless way that creates a high risk of death or great bodily injury. And, a reasonable person would have known that acting in that way would create such a risk. Now I am going to share with you three real case examples, even that I have recently sat in on and examined thoroughly, either wrote extensively on and or declined to be a juror on. That still haunts me, and you will soon actually see and understand why. So, case number one of investigator playing judge or jury was the Skyler Richardson case, the trial. This girl who had struggled with anorexia as a teenager, just 18 years old, and when she got her first boyfriend, her mom took up notice at some point anyway in the relationship and took her daughter, to the doctors to get on birth control. Since her daughter was just 18, she sat in the waiting room and was not at her side when she was given a pregnancy test that turned up positive. The doctor even did an ultrasound and determined, she was 32 weeks pregnant. In fact, Skylar began crying during the appointment and was, denied birth control and was set up with a chart and told to schedule, for her follow up appointments. So when she left with her mother, who was waiting in the waiting room, she wiped away tears and explained nothing of what happened. Several weeks later, still saying nothing about her pregnancy, she actually went to prom, and that night was dropped off late afterwards and had only mentioned to her boyfriend feeling cramps. Later, while her parents and her brother were upstairs in the house, though asleep, she was downstairs in the bathroom. Sitting on the toilet, she delivers a baby girl. She thinks the baby is born dead. She later reports no sound and that the cord was even not attached. She said she picked up the baby up out the toilet and held her crying for a while and was terrified of what was taking place and also, of telling anyone about it. She made the decision to go to the backyard and buries the baby in the ground, even puts her prom flowers on top of the baby buried, cleans up, and goes to bed telling no one that night or next morning, just continues to act normal, even up to 6 weeks later. She is told by her mom that the clinic keeps calling, prompting a follow up appointment. Mother assumes it's about her birth control, takes her when daughter goes back alone again, this time, though, even though it's a different doctor, attempting again to just get birth control. Doctor sees chart and gives an exam, asking, where is this baby? Because all signs pointed to her just have given birth. Skylar begins to cry. She bursts out all the events to the doctor that recently took place, that she had had the baby, buried it, and nobody even knows. Doctor is shocked, has her even repeat what she is saying because she can't believe what she is hearing, and of course, calls the police. So investigators come out, they dig up the remains, interview Skylar. The story keeps changing though when she is coached about possible outcomes and repeated scenarios, since she was the only one, that was present and can introduce. Was arrested and charged quickly, even the charges, kept getting worse when the doctor that performed the autopsy even makes an error of judgment, let's say, suggesting the baby's remains were somehow burned. So, teenager is coerced into admitting a possible cremation was attempted, or occurred that night as well. Fast forward over time period where case was even suggested for a death penalty, that a second forensic pathology overturns the case, and the doctor that made that comment on her report suggesting bones were burned even recants her statement, saying in July the bones looked burned, but in August she sees the bones weren't dried, properly before autopsy. She even had the nerve to mention, and it was highlighted. It is what it is. I had to look and listen again to observe that noted like, blase to me and sensitivity, to case from especially a doctor, this, expert opinion. Police were able to break this girl down and make her vulnerable. The media, additionally, gave to public opinion prematurely, hanging her. The case became a remake of the movie Clueless, sensational, because it went from her being sent to prison for the rest of her life, even um, to her going home to her parents, right? So, after her acquittal, she was given a lesser charge of abuse of a corpse and then, 3 years probation. I think they gave her even time served. Society proves, though, that even when a person is cleared, so to speak, they are not quick to forgive or forget circumstances, because after her trial, Skylar applied for more than 40 jobs. Both applications and job interviews were all turned away with not even one acceptance. The law firm, I think, that represented her ended up giving her some part time work. Another case of expert officials making a mistake was on a serious trial in case number two. Excuse me, let me take a sip of water. So, a 5-day old baby was found dead in a trailer home. When police arrived on the scene, they took notice of the baby's face that was covered in uh, bites and scratch marks, blood. Um, the police interviewed the mother, noting that she had long fingernails and that she appeared too passive for a mother with a dead baby. That she stated also that she had taken her pain pill after the baby was put to sleep, and that, she then went to sleep beside her. She was not awakened by any noise, just sight of her child when she woke up naturally the next morning to finding her baby, dead beside her. So police were already convinced that she, was the accused and let her know even she was under investigation, and requested even to cut her nails to send to the lab to determine if blood and DNA of her child were on them. The mother agreed to open interviews and forensic tissue and blood finding of her nails and her trailer home. Later that night, though, the 19-year-old young mom saw herself as the top story on the news airing on TV, reported stating, "Mom kills her infant. Baby." She must have instantly felt that indictment, right, from both the police and then society before the evidence was even reviewed. The forensics came back with this, get this, zero trace found on mother's fingernails, but also found injury to baby's face to been caused by rat bite and scratches happened. So then police officials changed their minds and decide to then seek charges for mother taking a pain pill and then being unable to arouse to her baby, crying while being attacked by a rat, even right beside her, as she had stated. I even listened to more than once this detective going into great detail of both his theories and of interviewing her. He admitted to, because of all his experience, some 15 plus years, that he was convinced of the decision he had made to charge her one after the other because of the so-called evidence. There was also the concern raised of her living conditions. How was a rat so accessible to her newborn baby? However, bonus, because after experts requested additional items to complete their investigation, because only, at that moment they had just the infant and in the sleeper, and wanted to examine the bedding and pillows, because, to determine anyway, if a rat had in fact killed this child, by attacking it, then there would be, pooling of blood present. So the blood was also put under a microscope, and it was there that the facts began to be focused, because what they saw was clear view of active complex herpes virus. They ordered an autopsy, and the infant's cause of death after the lungs were examined changed, because more specific clues and factors found determined, in fact, the true finding to be herpes pneumonia to be cause of death. Infant likely died. Then rat in the surrounding area or even walls of the trailer likely smelled, the milk on the baby's lips or the mouth, and even the beginning of rigor mortis, on the infant laying dead, which is why mother did not hear baby crying, because it didn't. Finally, case number 3. 2-year-old child was found strangled by a 4-foot python. Initially, when police were called, rescue crew arrived to the scene, assuming because of the canyon area it was an attack of a snake from the wild, and it was just a horrible accident. But soon after, investigators find a homemade cage in another room of the house, empty, that only had like a quilt like cover that was slightly open. They also found shed skin that officials confirmed with experts' careful review that the snake was not fed recently, and a pet owner of a snake should know that snakes are very hungry after they shed their skin, which is why the python then went into the next room and strangled the child in its crib, where it lay sleeping, attempting to eat it. So the parents were put on trial. So the question is, if you were a juror on this case, which charge, if any, would you consider to fit this case? Criminal negligence or manslaughter? Now, we understand why a thorough investigation is paramount. Just a hunch, even from experienced law enforcement, is never enough. Um, I do also think that it was not fair, too, that these young mothers were put on trial in the media and public opinion before they had confirmed that she was charged even with the crime of killing her child. It turns out neither of these two mothers didn't at least intentionally, kill their child. Technically, the parents on trial didn't either. But what, if any, liability do you think should be held legally for the death of these children from, their parents, though, right? Begs the question because the number of deaths, even on small children, uh, by the way, of animals is still rising. Hold on one second, I'm taking a sip of water. Granted, the rat was not a pet, but do you know how many kids are still being killed, though, by the so called, pet of the family each year? Try 4.5 million people each year are bitten by a dog alone. Annually, half of them are children. 81% of those bite injuries were to the head and or neck of a child under the age of 4. Studies show pit bulls and Rottweilers accounted for 76% of fatal dog attacks. Additionally, more than 12 million dogs are euthanized in shelters for behavior problems each year. Um, I'm using dog statistics because obviously, it's the most common pet, right? But even with a low profile, social media pages about these cases are still operating. I don't know if any of these young mothers will ever have a normal life again, at least in their hometown, right? And only at the age of what, as young as 18 or 19, when what they really need is support and opportunities. No one has walked in any of their shoes. So, who, are any of us to judge them and so harshly? It breaks my heart. I will even share a direct message I have from Skyler. She says, "My biggest regret is not having the strength to tell someone that I was pregnant. I wish I would have done it differently. I'm plagued by guilt every day for not telling someone. My concern is she made a poor choice out of fear, but will she have to remain fearful?" I bet, these mothers met emotional exhaustion, if not before, then after, their trial. You may also find it interesting to learn that the charge is more serious and harder to beat if the child is under the age of 5. And lastly, I leave you with these newly enforced factors to ponder. Parents can also be even held liable if they have admissible evidence and if they are overcome defenses, such as like the victim, provoking the dog, ignoring warnings, or acting negligently. However, unintentional injuries that lead to child's deaths rarely result in criminal charges or jail time, and that is because prosecutors often elect not to file charges because there's no criminal intent. In personal injury law, negligence is the failure to use reasonable care or caution when doing something. When a child is seriously injured or killed, someone is legally liable, including, a parent, a caregiver, another driver, or another person present. Times have certainly changed because my father would take me to preschool on his motorcycle. Back then it was no big deal, but fast forward to today, it would be unheard of, right? And finally, I leave you with the case that will shock you the most, as it did me. So, Southern California judge Jeffrey Ferguson shot and killed his wife. They were out at a restaurant and witnessed arguing, and then they went home and continued arguing. She had made a comment when he made a hand gesture, as if he was holding a gun. And she said something to the effect of, why don't you just hold a real gun, and pointed at me. So he pulled a pistol from his ankle holster and shot her in the chest. Then he texted his court clerk and bailiff to say, "Sorry, I won't be into work tomorrow because I just shot my wife." When the police arrived, they said he reeked of alcohol and said to them, "Man, I can't believe I just did this." What is more shocking is that they granted him $1 million bail. But while he was told to surrender his passport, got fitted for an ankle monitor, and told to possess no alcohol or firearms, he was brought back into custody when it was reported that he was posting on Facebook with knowing or reckless disregard for the truth of statement. Then he was also friends on Facebook with attorneys that appeared regularly before him in court. And after search of his home, get this, found 47 weapons and 26,000 rounds of ammunition in his home. This was a California judge that held honor, even awards for working on some of the biggest narcotic cases in California. He has several large um, awards for that. President, too, of the Bar Association. You know, what is also strangely ironic is his name is Jeffrey Ferguson. The same name as the guy that was executed, in Missouri for the rape and murder of a 17-year-old girl finally in 2014 after serving 25 years on death row. It just goes to show you that anyone at any point in time, in any position, even a judge, can turn and become unstable and be just as guilty of the worst case scenario. Okay, guys, that's all for today. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.